Hello. Our story begins moments after Palpatine is lifted into the air on the second Death Star. Panic filled his body as he realized that after 23 years of pure loyalty, Lord Vader betrayed him. Sidious screamed out in terror as he was lifted towards the edge of the chasm and thrown in. Vader had saved his son, and Sidious was about to fall to oblivion. But Sidious wouldn't go that easily. He had the galaxy in his grip for 36 years, and an empire following 13 years as Supreme Chancellor. Sidious prepared for this moment. It was only natural. The rule of two encouraged such behavior from the Sith, and it wasn't his destiny to fall victim to Vader, let alone an individual that wouldn't even remain a Sith. Palpatine screamed in fear as his body merged with the power source at the bottom of the shaft and created a combustion that sent electricity outwards. Sidious was gone physically. Spiritually, he was still the Dark Lord of the Sith. Thanks to secrets bestowed to him by his master, he knew the key to surviving death. A lesson passed on by Darth Plagueis the Wise, the unfortunate fool who taught his apprentice everything before he was killed in his sleep. Palpatine woke up inside of a bacta tank and was hoisted out, his loyalists running to his aid and getting on their knees before their emperor. Sidious stumbled as he started forward. His new body wasn't like his old one. It was weak and fragile. Despite his old body being nearly a century old, this clone body was nothing but unused muscles, bones, and limbs. It was sitting in a bacta tank waiting for its master to claim it. Palpatine turned to his loyalists and told them that it was time to move forward with their next plans of operation. The Empire would soon enact its contingency plans. His most loyal subjects would follow his bidding. Sidious had sentinels dispatched to the most important Imperial leaders, sentinels that deposited messages for his men to follow. These contingency orders would force the Empire to bend to his will and pay for their mistakes while he wasn't present. The Sith Eternal were to continue harvesting the galaxy's young, and they were to make sure they fell in line with the Sith. The Final Order would ensure the longevity of Sidious's evil regime. The Final Order was never meant to wait. It was meant to usurp the Empire once it won its war with the Alliance. As Palpatine got everything together for his plans, he noticed that his body was really achy. Despite Plagueis learning how to do this, he never had a need to do it, and when he did have a need, he didn't have the reaction time or understanding to do so, because he was drunk. Palpatine felt so weird. It was like his body was decomposing on him. Sidious did have alternative plans in place in case something bad happened with the cloning, though he wanted to be sure it was the right decision. He was escorted by his loyal subjects to a Sith altar on Exegol, where he would conduct a ritual. He used the darkness surrounding the planet he currently lived on to travel into the future. Sidious saw his alter ego, Snoke, rise up in the failure of the Empire, the rise of the First Order, and the fall of the Jedi. Sidious's plans were flawless, as always, until they became flawed once more. He was to lose to none other than his own blood, one that swore loyalties to the Jedi way, one that Anakin Skywalker called to himself. Sidious snarled as he stepped away. This wouldn't be sufficient. 30 years was enough time to plan revenge and even go around this. But instead of doing that, he was going to do something else. Palpatine could feel his body drooping to the ground. If he didn't act fast, he'd be stuck in one location, hoisted up by a machine that would keep him alive. He would become nothing but a shell, waiting for the rise of his final order, and waiting for the chance to extract life force from one of the Skywalker twins. Sidious used his knowledge from over the years and acted quickly, but he knew he could not lose himself. The irony of his fear was it was the very thing that drove Anakin Skywalker to his side, and now Sidious was going back to the beginning of the Empire. He used a darkened version of the world between worlds, one that he discovered in the 4 years since Ezra departed from Lothal. Sidious was able to draw off a Force ghost, a Jedi at that. He never knew of them before Endor, but Grandmaster Yoda revealed himself to Palpatine shortly following his death. It allowed Palpatine to harvest off the little bit of energy left behind from the age-old Qui-Gon Jinn. He tortured the old Jedi Master until he changed his entire fate, opening a portal and transporting himself back to the moment his empire was born. Sidious looked down at his hands. He no longer was missing fingers. He could remember everything that transpired, and he smiled, looking down to Anakin Skywalker, who had pledged himself over to the dark side. Palpatine addressed the boy as Lord Vader. It was almost on instinct that it happened, and now Palpatine could control his own fate. The Jedi had told Anakin that the Force was always in motion. Yoda had told Skywalker, learn to let go of everything you fear to lose. Sidious stood with control over his future, but he was controlled by the fear of his own fate. He was the very thing Anakin Skywalker was at this moment. Sidious knew the fate that waited Anakin, one where he would lose to Kenobi, serve an empire, and eventually betray him to save his son. This could not be allowed. Palpatine lived 23 years of pure victory until one moment of ignorance. As Anakin waited for Palpatine's next command, the Sith Lord drew a blade from one of the vases in the room. The weapon ignited and Anakin looked up, reaching for his lightsaber but missing. Sidious drove his lightsaber through Anakin's shoulder and ripped up. The strike was made for Anakin's heart, but he pulled back just in time. Skywalker cried out in agony as he dipped out of the way, where Sidious struck at him again, missing once more. Anakin pulled his lightsaber with a force, and before he could ignite it, his body was covered in electricity. His body buzzed with thousands of volts shooting through it. Only Palpatine could see the irony. Father like son. Only this time there was no one to save Skywalker. As he did with Mace, Sidious launched Anakin from the window, to fall to his insignificant death. Palpatine had to return to the moment and gather his composure. There was so much that had been done before that needed to be redone, though this time it was going to be different. To make sure he lived long past his initial failure, he sent out Commander Fox and Commander Appa to the Jedi Temple. They would need to double the reinforcements. At the same time, his royal guard was being sent to Padmé's residence. His instruction for the royal guard was to make sure she was handled with care. Once the children were born, she was to be disposed of. Sidious then returned to the joys of Order 66. It was kind of funny. Many times after the rise of the Empire, he wished he could relive his greatest triumph, and now he couldn't. There was nothing that could stop his empire. The Jedi would be destroyed. Momentarily, Vader was gone. Maul was dealt with on Mandalore and the galaxy was his for the taking. He considered, especially after executing Order 66, what he could do with his next apprentice. He believed that Grand Inquisitor, if he survived the attack on the temple, would make a fine one. Many of the Inquisitors of the Imperial era were never trained to their full potentials. Their ceilings were high, none of them, not even Grand Inquisitor, being comparable to that boy from Lothal. It irritated Palpatine more than anything. Ezra Bridger would... Then it clicked. The child would need to be found and secured. He knew that Ezra would be born soon, if not before the Skywalker twins, so he prepared a commando unit to go and grab him. It would be the Bad Batch. Obviously, this was pending them not betraying the Empire. Palpatine couldn't remember if they did or not. In the case that they did, then a commando unit would suffice. Regardless, he was playing catch-up with his old self, while trying to remember every minuscule failure from before. In the city of Coruscant, Anakin slammed down through an awning and crashed into a bundle of crates and trash. He was in a world of pain. His body ached and he felt electricity coursing through his limbs. He was experiencing another case of phantom limbs, due to losing the arm that had already lost the forearm. He struggled as he tried to get himself off the ground, and as he did, he tripped, slamming down into more trash as he looked back over at the executive building. He didn't understand why that happened. What was the purpose? To solely defeat Windu? That seemed pretty weak in his opinion. Not that he had any doubts of Mace, but all of that manipulation just to kill one Jedi seemed counterproductive. It seemed like a lot of work for a very small result. Anakin tried to get up. He was confused. The betrayal was already bad, but now he wasn't sure where his loyalties lay. But then a terrifying thought crossed his mind, one that made him consider getting allies. He knew he couldn't beat Palpatine alone, especially not without his dominant fighting arm. If he wanted a fighting chance, he needed Windu, but that would obviously be a little problematic, considering the whole cutting off his forearm thing. Anakin quickly got up and ran. All he cared about was saving Padmé. If he could save her, then it was worth it in the end. Skywalker traced the path of Windu, trying to figure out where he could have landed and if he had survived. As he was running rampant through the streets, he felt a shift in the Force. It was a swing of darkness covering the galaxy, unlike anything Anakin had ever felt before. He didn't even know how to conceptualize these feelings. He stopped, looking around himself and then feeling the death. It was the Jedi. They were falling victim to something around the galaxy. Thousands of voices shocked and confused before being silenced. Anakin continued until he found Windu, who was unconscious. Anakin used what strength he could to leverage him over his shoulder and bring him to a local medical room. Without anyone knowing of Order 66, the nurses took him in, getting the Jedi Master to a medical room without Anakin. As Skywalker lay Mace onto the bed, his eyes opened and he registered Anakin's face. It was confusing for a moment, as he was filled with both anger and disappointment, before being pulled away from Skywalker. Another nurse grabbed Anakin and brought him into an adjacent room. A medical droid came in to inspect his injuries, and he told the droid to give him a basic arm. He didn't have time to spare, as he deposited Republic credits to cover both Mace Windu and himself. The arm that Anakin was given wasn't quite as functional as his previous forearm, but it would have to suffice. He just needed something to be able to use during combat, something that was more than nothing. After a very short operation, Anakin ran out and traded the rest of his credits for a speeder, which he used and launched away from the location he was at. The night was very dark, and the chilling rise of darkness was still present. He soared above the buildings under the shadow of the executive building. The thought of fighting Palpatine alone crossed his mind, but he couldn't. Windu would help him with that later, hopefully. He just needed to find Padmé and make sure she was safe at the moment. As he lifted up, a bright light from the left side of his peripheral vision caught his attention. The Jedi Temple was engulfed in flames. He couldn't believe it. This was bad enough of a distraction. He just hoped that they'd fend off their opponents. Anakin sped towards Padmé's residence. When he arrived, LAAT gunships were surrounding it, and he slid past them, landing in the living room and jumping off the speeder. The clones all turned to him as he demanded to know where the senator was. They raised their blasters and Skywalker raged, grabbing his lightsaber from his belt and igniting it. Fire filled the living room as Skywalker used his skills to defend himself, while also using the Force to crush clones and throw them off the balcony. He quickly cut through his foes before finding Commander Fox, who had been reassigned, and gutting him at the sight. Anakin found this one to be the most personal, but when he searched the apartment, he could not find Padmé. When he got to the bedroom, he saw from the corner of his eye movement. It was an LAAT. They had to have her inside of it as it sped away. Skywalker rushed out of the room, past all the dead bodies, and jumped onto the speeder and began his pursuit. The LAAT sped through the city and out the other side, towards the industrial sector of the planet. Anakin followed, avoiding firing so he wouldn't hit Padmé or hurt her. The clones inside the ship hadn't noticed him trailing them because they weren't firing back. His chase led for longer than it needed to, as the clones brought Anakin through the industrial sector before closing their flaps as they dove between buildings and moved around with haste. Anakin found it hard to keep up, only because of the fact that he was using a speeder. The trail ran cold when the LAAT clipped the side of a building and slammed into a hangar bay, one attached to Palpatine's lair. When Anakin landed, he jumped off the speeder and ran to the doors of the gunship, prying them open with the Force and igniting his weapon. But on the inside, there was no one. The clone pilots ejected and grabbed their pistols and started shooting at Skywalker, who raised two fingers, and with a snap at them, they dropped to the ground. Anakin couldn't figure out why he was brought here, so he looked around, searching for Padmé, just in case that she was indeed here. What he found was Palpatine's altar and some other ancient Sith artifacts. His searching left him lost, and while he was investigating other parts of the works, the gunship exploded. This wasn't a part of the plan, but the fuel line leaked and ignited, detonating. It ripped half the layer apart and left Skywalker looking for a manageable way out of the situation. Across the city, Sidious was keeping Padmé in the care of his royal guards, ones who brought her to the Republic medical facility. Anakin was drawn away intentionally. Palpatine wanted to make sure that even if Skywalker did survive, he couldn't impede his plans again. It worked to perfection, because Anakin was now trapped on the other side of the city. Sidious moved his plans forward, ensuring that the twins were born into his possession and whisked away. He gave his royal guards the Sith Wayfinder and told them to take the twins to Exegol. He would be there when he was finished. Palpatine knew the course to the Sith planet, and he would make good use of his knowledge once he finished up stripping the Republic from his power. Hours sped by on Coruscant. Mace was still under examination from the medics below the executive building. The Jedi Temple was under fire, and Anakin Skywalker was desperately trying to piece together what he could from the rubble so he could return to the city and kill Palpatine. While Sidious was unaware of Windu and Skywalker's predicaments, he was confident in his belief that nothing would stop the return of the Sith. Padmé was killed after Luke and Leia were born, which was semi-premature due to the stress of being captured. The twins were under Palpatine's control. What followed was Obi-Wan and Yoda returning to Coruscant, completely missing Anakin and Mace and going after Palpatine. Yoda didn't want Obi-Wan to be present, but it was all Kenobi could ask for. The temple was empty. The survivors had either died or escaped under the city. It would be impossible for Kenobi to track all of them down, if any of them actually existed. He just feared that Obi-Wan, despite his mastery of Form 3, wouldn't be able to keep up. With the Empire declared the new state of the galaxy, the Clone Wars coming to an end and Sidious as its Emperor, the Jedi were going to do what they must, which was wipe out the Sith. To ensure the Separatist leaders were dealt with, another group of royal guards were sent to Mustafar. Sidious told these leaders something that convinced them that these royal guards would aid them, but like Anakin would've, they were sent to kill each and every last one of them, as well as issue out the command to shut down every droid across the galaxy. Kenobi and Yoda entered Palpatine's office below the Senate chambers. He didn't have time for a back and forth commotion. Kenobi ignited his lightsaber and Yoda did the same. Palpatine looked to his longtime ally, Mas Amedda, and told him to get out when he could. Sidious pulled 2 lightsabers from his desk, his other one having been since retrieved. He launched himself across the room. Obi-Wan and Yoda, despite knowing he was a Sith, didn't expect it. Their blades moved with exceptional prowess, as the Sith Lord swung and dodged wherever he could. The 2 Jedi Masters attempted to strike him down, but Sidious was fast. Yoda was able to perfectly work in harmony with Kenobi, using his own offense to match Kenobi's defense. It worked better than Yoda could have ever expected. But Sidious was the Sith Lord, one who had brought the Jedi to their knees. He needed to make sure they were dealt with himself. Every ounce of training for the last several decades of his life led to this moment. He spun backwards, picking the desk up and lobbing it under himself as he flipped over it. Kenobi stopped the desk as Yoda jumped it. Mas Amedda sped past Obi-Wan as he cut through the desk to attack Palpatine, switching into Form 4. Similarly to how Dooku did, Palpatine lifted Kenobi off the ground and held him in the air as he fended off Yoda. The Grand Master became panicked, his sole focus on saving Obi-Wan. He jabbed forward, launching himself over Palpatine as Kenobi continued to kick his legs helplessly in the air. Sidious then threw Kenobi back into the wall and watched him drop to the ground. Like poetry, it rhymed. He couldn't handle Dooku, and he couldn't handle Sidious. But this time he'd make sure he stayed dead. Yoda and Palpatine's duel became a lot more aggressive. Tons more movement where they bounced around the room. Their mastery was incomparable, as Sidious let himself get targeted by Yoda, which he used to his advantage, flinging himself towards Kenobi and cutting his unconscious body across the chest. One more Jedi left. Yoda was horrified. His greatest failure had just become worse, as he and Palpatine moved into the Senate pod and their duel continued. They fought in the Senate chambers until Yoda eventually was forced off a floating Senate pod to fall to the bottom. It was horrid. He had beat Palpatine, and in a match of the Force, he lost. Yoda was overwhelmed with failure, and he abandoned the fight with Palpatine. His hope was that Skywalker was still alive and the Chosen One could be trained to bring balance to the Force. That was something. The fight with Sidious was so close to victory, and had Yoda not fallen down to the bottom of the Senate chambers, he would have won, or continued fighting until someone did. Instead, in his mind, it was time to retreat into the shadows. Too many Jedi had been lost today. Sidious laughed away as Yoda vanished under the cover of the shadows. When he got himself situated, his shock troopers informed him that Yoda had escaped, which was truly tragic. But Sidious could live with that. Just like in the original timeline, Yoda could die out alone, as the galaxy he knew forgot about the Jedi and embraced the Sith Empire. Palpatine returned to his focus on his new plan. While he did have ideas for how he would orchestrate Necromancer, he was most focused on making sure his new students, the twins, were taken care of so that he may begin their instruction when all the nitty-gritty stuff was out of the way. By the time Skywalker was able to return to the city, Yoda had vanished with Bail Organa, the twins were on their way to Exegol, and Padmé was killed. Anakin didn't know where to look, but he could see that the executive and Senate buildings had become fortresses. There would be no way for him to fight Sidious without Windu's help. He returned to the medical facility to look for Mace. When he walked in, the Jedi Master was gone, and he asked around. The nurses told him that they were not to cooperate with the traitorous Jedi. Anakin was confused, but then he realized that Palpatine likely ordered the clones to terminate the Jedi or something. That didn't make sense in theory, but he knew that Palpatine had to be involved on a deeper level, being that he was a Sith Lord. Anakin worried about Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, hoping that they were alright, before he turned to leave. As he did, a lightsaber ignited and pulled around his neck, as another metallic arm grabbed his torso with fierce strength. He winced in pain as he held his head back. The amethyst glow of the blade told him everything he needed to know, as Windu told Skywalker to give him one reason why he shouldn't terminate him right here and right now. Anakin thought, but he couldn't actually find a solid answer. All of this was his fault, and the question made him quarrel with himself more than anything. If he hadn't betrayed Windu, Padmé wouldn't be missing, the Jedi wouldn't be in peril, and the galaxy wouldn't feel so much darkness. Anakin told Mace that he had no reason. His only reason was that he wanted to destroy Sidious. Windu wasn't buying it. 13 years with very little trust for young Skywalker. 13 arduous years where he watched a boy with so much potential chase adventure, as Yoda would have said. And at the end of those 13 years, at the end of 3 years of a long-fought war, he was finally able to trust him. His penance was a fight lost to the Sith. Their victory was written into time. Mace held the blade closer to Anakin's throat and told him that he wanted so badly to do it, but he extinguished the lightsaber and pushed Anakin forward. It wasn't the Jedi way. Anakin looked back. Mace's face was covered in burn scars. His body showed that of someone devastated by a lost battle. His forearm had a black sleeve over it, similar in style to what Anakin had. It wasn't intentional, it was all they had here. Mace turned and thought of the words to say, but not a single one came to mind. He left the medical facility. He initially believed he'd have the strength to kill Anakin, knowing that it was Skywalker who betrayed him and was betrayed. But he didn't. Instead, he was going to finish what he started. Anakin followed him, still not able to get a full replacement for his arm due to the whole Order 66 thing. He chased out after Windu and told him that he didn't have to like him and he didn't have to want to work with him, but he wanted to help. Palpatine took so much, they could defeat him together, and Mace would never have to see him again after that. The truth is, Windu didn't care. He saw the news inside the medical facility. There was 24-hour coverage of the Jedi Temple. As Master of the Order, he should have been there, but he woke up not more than 20 minutes before Anakin came back. He missed everything, and he should have been there. As Master of the Order, it was his responsibility to be there for the Jedi, and he wasn't. That was a burden he would never be able to let himself live down. Mace never responded to Skywalker. They just marched on the Senate building, and as they arrived, they climbed up to the landing platform, where they watched Palpatine enter his shuttle and lift off. Anakin asked Mace if he had a tracker, but it was busted from the electricity. Skywalker ran forward with his and lobbed it at the ship, but he did so with his non-dominant hand, and watched it soar past the ship as it flew away. His hope was to be able to find Palpatine if he escaped their grips. When he looked back, clones were moving to intercept them, and Mace was running for another vessel. Skywalker knew these clones would try to kill him, so he followed Windu, getting into the ship before the doors closed. Mace primed the weapons on the ship, and they chased after Palpatine. Multiple starfighters were dispatched to intercept the Jedi. Luckily, Palpatine had a winged escort that got behind him, and as the Jedi pursuit got closer, Palpatine exited the atmosphere and left for hyperspace. The Jedi had to jump to random coordinates because they were still being shot at. Now Mace and Anakin were stuck together. What followed were the conversations between Mace and Anakin, a terrible confession along with a heart-to-heart, one that didn't validate Anakin's actions but made them comprehensible at the least. It was a terrible time, but Mace's concern now was finding the other members of the High Council, hoping that someone could aid them as they returned to kill Sidious. Mace would eventually be able to reconvene with Yoda on Polis Massa. Anakin got his new arm fully replaced when they were there, something that was a lot less robotic. Yoda and Mace had a lot of disgust for Skywalker, as is the Jedi way, but they decided that they would allow Anakin to join them on their return for Palpatine. The sole reason was because if the prophecy was true, then he should be present for the death of the Sith, one would assume. The days that followed Order 66 were devastating, and Yoda had his reasons for wanting to go into exile, but Mace wouldn't allow it. Palpatine was beatable, and he was the living proof that it was true. Yoda almost beat him as well, and well, technically he did, until he was outmaneuvered. It was time they take the fight to the Sith Lord. The two Jedi didn't interact with Anakin much. Mace did confess his almost assassination of Anakin to Yoda. It was really awkward, and all Anakin could really think about was finding his wife, which Yoda and Mace were well aware of by this point. They made their return to Coruscant, short on words and short on care for what came of it, aside from Palpatine's death. In the minds of Yoda and Mace, they had no issue dying to make sure the Sith never had longevity in the galaxy. They also didn't care what happened to Anakin. Sidious during this time delegated tasks to Mas Amedda, while he took care of the twins on Exegol. He started his own new plans. Instead of bringing scientists to Tantus or wherever else in the galaxy, they'd come here. There was no reason to make waste of valuable scientists and time. When he returned to Coruscant, he was jumped by the Grand Master, Master of the Order, and Chosen One. He honestly didn't expect the Jedi to be so bold. He already beat all three of them, in his mind, so this wasn't competition to him. His surprise, though, left him in an unfavorable position, because despite Windu and Skywalker losing limbs, they were still very capable duelists, and this fight, unlike the previous ones, took place inside of the Chancellor's residence. There was nowhere for him to run. Every direction he turned, there was an emerald, blue, or amethyst blade, and he couldn't escape it. As he struggled between the Jedi, he was forced into a corner, and then he saw the irony. He saw that in the same way Skywalker was tricked down the dark path, he himself couldn't escape his own fate. The Jedi shoved him backwards and ripped through his limbs before he was lying on his back, looking into the blades of justice. Skywalker demanded to know where his wife was, and Sidious just smiled, telling Anakin that she was dead, just like the Jedi religion, because even if they kill him, there would be no future for them, revealing that he had so much more than they could ever dream of, and Skywalker's legacy would be remembered not for the death of Palpatine, but for the rebirth of the Sith. His children were already his. Without missing a beat, Yoda jabbed his blade forward and killed Palpatine. They turned back to Anakin as he told them that he had no intentions to be a Sith, but now he was angry with Yoda. Palpatine had key information about his children, but in a way, the Jedi didn't care. Order 66 had taught them nothing. The Sith were only two, no more no less, and now both Sith, Dooku and Sidious, were dead. Why should they care about the Skywalker twins? It was time they rebuild their broken order. They shuffled past Anakin and he was left in shock. Now, even frustration. He told them that he wouldn't be responsible for it, but their order deserved nothing but ashes. Yoda looked back, telling Anakin that it was already that, because of him. Skywalker needed to find his own way off of Coruscant, but he didn't believe the notion that Padmé was dead. It was a sad reality. While the Jedi and Anakin split up, much change would unfold. Grand Master and Master of the Order would cut down Palpatine's greatest advocates before sending a message from the temple, giving instructions for the future Jedi to meet them at an undisclosed location. What made everything more troubling for them was that Grand Inquisitor beat them there, having gutted 24 survivors that didn't join him. He believed that Palpatine was still alive, and that he soon would serve him. Most of these kills were knights, Padawans, or younglings. Yoda and Windu would kill Grand Inquisitor when they arrived and buried the dead. Anakin searched everywhere. He returned to Naboo to see if her family knew anything, and then he became desperate because she wasn't there. He needed to figure out where they were, so he returned to the destroyed Sith lair on Coruscant and started searching from there. The galaxy was in shambles. The Empire was without its Emperor. The CIS without their military leaders or military. The Jedi were without their order, and Skywalker was without his wife, best friend, and former student. It was a devastating time, and because Anakin never fully went down the dark path, he was left without a power high and only sadness. Palpatine's lair had no secrets for him, and due to that, he had to begin his own hunt for his apparent children. That was the only hope he had in the galaxy. He was pissed off at the Jedi too, but all he had was himself. There was literally nothing else keeping him alive. He learned that Obi-Wan died fighting Sidious, and there was no information about Ahsoka. Due to Palpatine, Mas Amedda, and other Palpatine loyalists being slain with lightsabers, the Jedi were going to be hunted with much more precision. Luckily for them, the Jedi Order was on an unknown planet in the galaxy. Anakin was in a perpetual state of frustration. Sometimes he wished he let Windu kill Palpatine. Other times he wished he fought Windu and Yoda after they executed Sidious. There were just so many possible outcomes from these events, and here he was, searching the galaxy for his wife and apparent kids. His hope for Padmé's life was slowly diminishing, but the hope for his children was growing. He knew what Palpatine said. It played in his mind over and over again. During his journeys, he'd visit Sith homeworlds and search for any signs of the twins. He never found anything. Most of these places had been abandoned long before Palpatine was ever born, and it was clear that the Sith Lord had little to no interest in them. Anakin felt lost, but with the help of some friends along the way, he found some sense of completion. Ahsoka revealed that Maul lived through Order 66, and so he spent an entire year tracking Maul down and finding him. A duel commenced, but it was more of a dance than anything. Maul wanted Anakin dead and Skywalker wanted answers. When push came to shove, Maul wasn't really able to beat Skywalker, and he lost the duel anyways. So he told Anakin that there were two Sith Wayfinders, ones that belonged to Palpatine and one that belonged to his apprentice. Sidious never gave Maul one, he just had the promise that he would earn it after Naboo. Being that never happened, he never got his hands on a Wayfinder, which meant that either Palpatine kept it or he gave it to Dooku. But being that it had been 4 years since the Clone Wars and Dooku's death, chances are it was gone. Skywalker was gracious for Maul's time and left him. Maul tried to propose a binding. They were both forgotten about, left to die by their orders. They could unite as one and create a new order. Skywalker had no interest. He only cared about finding his children. It may have been 4 years, but Anakin cared so deeply about those he loved that he would spend the rest of his life searching for them. Ahsoka continued with Anakin for a good portion of this time, and them being together really helped the both of them heal from the trauma of Order 66. While there were fights going on with the Empire, it was nowhere near as autocratic as Palpatine's would have been. It was pretty much the same as the Republic, just without Palpatine and a different label. Regardless, Skywalker and Tano continued on this mission for years. Ahsoka was getting a bit bogged down by the lack of results, but she wanted to be there for her friend. It was important to him, so it was important to her. Anakin was eternally grateful for Ahsoka's patience and kindness. They stuck together as they traversed the galaxy for 5 more years. It took so much time because one of the Wayfinders never left Exegol, and the other one was inside of Castle Sereno. When the Clone Wars ended and the Empire claimed victory over the galaxy, which took about a year of various political processes, the Empire cleared out supplies on Sereno, which meant the Sith Wayfinder that Dooku had was taken from Sereno into Imperial custody. Anakin kept in contact with Maul solely so he could diagnose what was and wasn't a Sith Wayfinder. Anakin and Ahsoka found various Sith holocrons, but not a single one of them were a Wayfinder. When Skywalker found it, he didn't need to contact Maul. He could tell. After 9 years of painful searching, Ahsoka and Anakin were off to Exegol. When they arrived, they found a planet shrouded in darkness, but they landed and ran into the temple. Ahsoka urged Anakin to be careful. There was no telling what evil lurked on this planet. As they descended into the temple itself, they could sense evil. The dark side was strong with the system. As they moved in, they could see a laboratory, and their lightsabers ignited, and then they saw Kaminoans and Imperial scientists. They were working dedicatedly. Despite Palpatine dying, his limbs were preserved, and his body was hung up inside of a Bacta tank. It hadn't decomposed, and it was being perfectly maintained. They were trying to piece their Emperor back together and bring him back to life. Dr. Hemlock, who was positioned here, told them to stop, but Skywalker didn't have time. Neither of them did. They moved through the facility, cutting down Imperial and Kaminoan scientists. It wasn't their fault, but they could finally have their peace. Royal Guards ran in to stop the 2 Force users, but Anakin and Ahsoka were far too skilled for them, striking them down and looking for signs of the children. Anakin stopped and held his hand outwards and felt the Force. He could sense familial bonds, and his eyes opened to see a little girl and a little boy. Both of them were scared, and Anakin dropped his weapon, asking them what their names were. Leia responded, telling him that they were Luke and Leia. As the words came out, a Sith Eternal member ran up to grab them, but Anakin used the Force to throw the cultists into the distance. Anakin got to his knees and told them that he was their father, and he had spent the last 9 years searching for them. His hands were held outstretched, but these kids had no understanding of what that meant. They had a very basic understanding of what life was. The cultists taught them how to be Sith, not humans. Though there was one cultist who disguised himself and taught the twins what he could, but that wasn't much. Anakin knew the twins were his because Luke and Leia were the names that he and Padmé picked out. Anakin asked if their mother was here, and they told him that they didn't have one. This only confirmed the worst to him. Anakin told the twins that he was here to bring them to the galaxy, to keep them safe, and to raise them as his own. They were afraid. They never interacted with outsiders. The Kaminoans and Imperials were here since they were infants, so they weren't considered outsiders. He promised them that he would take care of them, and he promised that he wouldn't let anything ever happen to them again. The Sith Eternal cultists were just coming around, due to all the noises that were heard when the Jedi arrived. Ahsoka was preparing for them to strike, and Anakin told the children that if they came now, they could escape whatever these people were. Luke and Leia looked to each other, and then they looked back. The cultists that took care of them told them several times that if they had the opportunity to escape on an Imperial shuttle, they needed to do it. But the Royal Guards always made sure the shuttles were empty before departure, even by flushing out the ventilation shafts on the ships themselves. The twins ran towards their father as he grabbed both of their hands gently and looked to each of their eyes and told them they would escape together. It was almost like he could hear their thoughts and memories. The exchange they shared between each other before running to him told Anakin everything he needed to know. Anakin led the twins to the ship as the cultists chased them from Exegol, and they left. The Sith were pretty much gone, aside from Maul, who was so far removed from their religion as it was. Palpatine's body was in shambles due to being cut into pieces and ripped out of a bacta tank. There'd be no return for him. Anakin saved the coordinates so that he could return to make sure the Sith stayed dead forever. But for now, it was time for a new beginning. The pain of Padmé's death was something he had accepted, but only now had the full truth of. With his twins and best friend, they abandoned the dreary world of Exegol and returned to Naboo, where Anakin could raise Luke and Leia as normal kids, surrounded by friends and family. Ahsoka would never stay put, as she had other interests that she desired following. Anakin would always be appreciative for her care and compassion during their journey to bring Luke and Leia home. The galaxy had shifted. The Jedi were no longer being hunted, but their order was no more than 50 members out on Ahch-To, an order almost waiting to die. Maul's Crimson Dawn was suffering under embargoes and blockades left out in the Outer Rim by the Empire, and for Anakin, he finally had the life he spent an entire lifetime dreaming of. He wished that Padmé could be here to witness it, but there was, for him, nothing more fulfilling than having his children, finally. The Naburis were waiting for his return, and they welcomed him and their grandchildren with open arms. Skywalker would never remarry, but he would build for himself and his children on Naboo a home. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all of our patrons: Benjamin Wells, Alexandria Reese, The Beginning and End, M, Django Fett Clone, Nick 5098, INTJ Recluse, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tibbs, CC2024, Galvin Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir Realm 1767, Darth Revan, Granddaddy Ban, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewu 670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Knox, Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny Naguin, Sansa Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Galaxy 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin 003, Lord Draken, Fortress Legacy Star Wars, Airbus, Rex the Wolf, The Man with the First Names, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. For supporting the channel, smash that like button. Otherwise, let's talk about the story. So I wanted to take a different approach with the Jedi, where they're not working with Anakin because they want to work with him. They're working with him because they seriously just want to kill Palpatine. I think the Jedi at this point would just be so disgusted, which is why their rhetoric towards Anakin is from their perspective. They see him in that light, especially after his betrayal. As for Anakin's story, I thought it'd be interesting to take it where he's on a wild chase, like how Luke is before Rise of Skywalker. He's looking for Exegol but can't find it, and so that's why it takes Luke so long. It's spending all those years just searching and searching and searching for any sign of how to get to this hidden location. And as for Palpatine, I wanted the irony of him using time travel to literally be that he is doing what Anakin did, trying to avoid what fate has set in stone for him. So I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.